Michael Swain. Thank you, Mr. Michael Swain, Executive Director from Freedom of Religion South Africa. Thank you for your time this morning, sir.
Well, thank you. It is great to be back on Breakfast with Friends.
Oh, it's always
to
good.
have you, yeah.
It is so good. It truly, truly is. So, Michael, there's a little clip that we need to play, and this is just so, how can we say?
It's scary.
I don't know what words to use, but I think the best is that we just share the audio from
Parliament must certain its help. And we are saying Parliament must pass the relevant regulation, the relevant legislation that will say it's not business as usual around churches anymore. I said this over 8 years ago, whenever, but we're back because this thing then fell off the table for whatever reason. It's back on the table now, squarely, and we're going to be pushing it through.
Okay, so what are we exactly listening there?
Well, that was the voice of the former and again now current chair of the CRL Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Rights Commission. And unfortunately, as you would have heard, she is back on her old hobby horse because during her previous tenure, which was really a 4-year disruptive moment, she pushed for state regulation of religion. And the tack that she took was they produced a report called The Commercialization of Religion and the Abuse of People's Belief Systems. Okay. And in that, she basically identified a number of criminal, pretty high profile instances, like, for example, you might recall the Prophet of Doom. He sprayed insecticide in people's faces, and people were being told to drink petrol. And I think somebody might have been run over by a car or something. And she was saying, if only we could regulate, we could license every religious practitioner, then all these things would be eliminated. And of course, that's patently absurd on its face. Because if you have existing criminal law, and we did a deep dive research as Freedom of Religion South Africa, we're of course a legal advocacy group, so we know these things. Every single instance that they put forward as these abuses were covered by existing South African law. And in fact, in many cases, in the subsequent days and years that have gone by, almost every single one of those have been dealt with properly by criminal law. So regulating religion, if you can't enforce criminal law, let's suppose you can't, it's just putting a band-aid, over a wound. I mean, it's not going to do any difference. But of course, what it does do is it gives essentially the state control over the religious sector. And that's a deeply dangerous thing. The CRL were putting themselves forward to be the final arbiter, in their own words, to be the final decision makers of everything concerning faith and religion in South Africa. And what that would mean was that they would, as she said, it's not going to be business as usual around churches anymore. They would then set up a peer review committee. They would appoint people that they think are appropriate, who would decide ultimately whether or not you would be qualified as a pastor to be allowed to continue to preach and teach to your people, or to form a church or whatever else it was. And that means that the state basically has control. And that's a really dangerous thing. I mean, not only is that obviously a serious breach of your religious freedom, but it's also a significant control grab, because, and dangerously so, because probably one of the only independent voices in South Africa is the voice of the faith communities collectively. And in many instances, and I mean, we saw it in the previous dispensation with, legends like, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. It was the faith community speaking truth to power that really shifts the needle. And of course, if the government can control that voice, well, they can pretty much eliminate that voice. So even from a democratic point of view, it's a very dangerous and very concerning move. And the question we have to ask is, why now? Why again? I mean, you heard her, and I'm talking a little long now, but you heard her say, this somehow fell off the table for whatever reason.
No.
Well, to give the very clear reason why it fell off the table, it didn't fall off the table. It was decided. It was robustly debated and ventilated over a 4-year period. There were 5 days in Parliament when Parliament heard all the different submissions from the CRL and from the faith communities. And at the end of that, they decided that they would not support the CRL's recommendation to regulate religion through peer review mechanisms, etc. And they decided, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to pass legislation. And the president subsequently made a remark to say he believed that it would be important to leave the faith communities to be self-regulatory, because failing to do that would be an infringement of their religious freedom right guaranteed by the Constitution. That's a pretty good couple of reasons why it fell off the table. What happened? Why are we here again? What is the new issue, the compelling reason why we have to reopen this? Because it's utterly disruptive. And so we are saying we see no reason, no validity in this. The matter's settled, and we think this needs to be put to bed as quickly as possible.
Again, what you said at the start just resonates in my mind, that there are existing laws that are applicable to everybody. So if a pastor or somebody else from a different religion does something that is harming an individual, there are laws existing. So we don't need this.
No, we don't.
Precisely. I mean, it has never been a defense to a criminal act to say somehow it was God who told me to do it. That has never been, it will never be. You know, a crime is a crime is a crime. It doesn't matter if you're a pastor, a policeman, a politician. A crime is a crime. And if you break the law, then let the law deal with you. Let there be due process. And at the end of the day, then you face the consequences, assuming that you're found guilty. And I think potentially, you know, again, in the sentencing dimension. So let's suppose that you're a pastor and you've done something really egregious, like you've sexually assaulted a woman or something like that, and you're found guilty. Well, obviously that's a crime, but maybe in the sentencing element, because you have been in that position of trust by the community, then maybe you should get, because sentencing can vary, maybe you should get a harsher sentence to say, you know, that really was something that you abused your position.
Exactly.
But again, a crime is a crime. Never been a defense for religious freedom. And we believe that that's the problem, that let the law be enforced and let it be enforced properly.
So this is definitely something we need to keep our fingers on the pulse regarding. For people who are listening and saying, I need to understand more, Michael, where do they go? How do they connect with FORSA?
So the best way to do it is to go onto our website, which is forsa.org.za. Freedom of Religion South Africa. You can Google it. You'll find it very quickly. We also have a Facebook page, Freedom of Religion SA. We have a YouTube channel. In fact, we've actually made a couple of recordings about this. So people want to refresh themselves. And I'm sure this interview you're also going to probably put up as well. So yeah, refresh yourself, listen out, and be alert. Because one of the things that can happen if we're not awake and alert to these things is that suddenly we find ourselves, oh, wait a minute, something's happened and some law's been passed. I can assure you it's not going to happen in this instance. We are watching this thing like the proverbial hawk.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Michael Swain is the Executive Director of Freedom of Religion South Africa, better known as FORSA. And this is really, ladies and gentlemen, about you and I making sure that we are aware not only of our rights, but that we are standing up for those rights and that we're fighting the good fight. Michael, always great to have you in studio. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Who builds a boat with no clouds in sight? Who walks up to a giant and picks a fight? Who turns a lion's den into a petting zoo? Who can have church in a fiery burn?